Honestly saying that Hamas should disarm and give all the hostages back immediately. They have it right. The Europeans have it wrong. Somebody ought to be understanding who the bad guys are here and who the good guys are.
The socialist who wants to be the next mayor of the nation's largest city views immigration authorities as the enemy.
This is a dark moment to be a stranger in our city, to be a stranger in our country. An authoritarian government in Washington, D.C. is dispatching masked agents to abduct immigrants from our streets. That is not justice. It is cruelty, and it is criminal.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem responds.
I can't even imagine how the people of New York City feel listening to that, knowing that if he were elected as mayor of New York, that they would have to continue to live with the dangerous criminals that are on their streets terrorizing that city right now. We've done so much work there as ICE officers and federal law enforcement officers getting dangerous criminals off the streets of New York. Literally hundreds and hundreds of them have been removed already in New York City because of President Trump's leadership. We need to continue to do that work, and we need a mayor that will work with us and have our backs when we're out there making sure we're going after those individuals.
A popular Southern California pastor is telling his congregation that if California's AB 495 passes, Christian parents are going to have to leave the state. More from Steve Jordahl.
Assembly Bill 495 is supposed to keep ICE from getting to the children of illegal immigrants. It allows a caregiver to take a child out of school. But as Pastor Jack Hibbs of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, tells his congregation, the definition of caregiver is basically anyone who can fill out and sign a form. That person can show up at a school and demand your child.
The bill does not require a background check for this man, requires no identification, no nothing. There's no requirement in the bill for the school to call you to ask you if it's okay if John takes your daughter out of school.
California already allows schools to gender transition your kids without telling you. Hibbs says if AB 495 passes, it'll be a short walk to taking kids whose parents don't toe the transgender line, then kids of parents with any Christian values at all.
This is the end of it. This is the end. This is it. If this bill passes, leave the state of California. You're going to need to pack up and you're going to have to get out. You got to get out. You got to run with your kids. You got to go.
He says it may be a tough political climate for conservatives in California, but that craziness is coming for those in other states as well.
Because good people don't vote in California, we've got idiots running this state. Perverts. The nation laughs at us, but Gavin Newsom's getting ready to run for president, and you laugh about it. The nation will vote for him.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
Wall Street is holding relatively steady today, following a mixed set of profit reports from such giants as McDonald's and the Walt Disney Company. The S&P 500 up 0.2%, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 18 points, and the Nasdaq Composite is 0.4% higher. Traders on Wall Street are betting heavily that the Federal Reserve will need to cut interest rates at its next meeting in September. Such cuts can give investment prices and the economy a boost, but they also can push inflation higher. More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney Empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. And today, folks, just going to let you know we are releasing the Epstein files.
Yes.
Right here.
Ed has it on his desk.
I have it on my desk. Oh, wait, it's on my desk in my office. I'll have to go get it. Fred Jackson, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ed.
And Wesley Wildman. Good morning, Wesley.
Good morning. Well played. Outstanding.
Yes. And, everyone's ears perked up.
Well, I just started laughing. I thought
Yeah.
that's hilarious. That was well played.
I got the big stack of files. Boy, we wish somebody has big stack of files somewhere.
Yeah, lay that to rest. That'd be nice. Be
That'd be
helpful for
nice.
everybody.
Absolutely. Chris Woodward is our news guy today.
Good morning. I was going to joke that I only got the heavily redacted version.
No,
Yeah. Oh,
the one that we've all had for years.
Yeah.
I was just tossing that out as a joke, but I think we will actually talk a little bit about it at some point. Can't get enough. It's kind of like Frosted Flakes in the morning when I was growing up. That was my breakfast just about every day growing up, and no breakfast was complete without Frosted Flakes, and no day is complete without a reference to the Epstein files. So
The Frosted Flakes, though, when that's a cereal that you have one bowl and you look at the clock and say, I think I got time for one more?
yes,
And then at the end of the second one, you're going, oh, why did I do that with all the milk, and just kind of getting
well, what I would do, and of course none of our listeners
kind of like the Epstein's files,
care
Once we get
anything.
it, after the second time, we're like,
care anything about this, but and of course it's terrible for you. But when I was young, especially a teenager, nothing fazed me. But I'd eat a bowl of Frosted Flakes, and there'd be enough milk in there to justify putting some more cereal in, but always too much cereal, and I had to put a little more milk.
that's it.
And
I had
the
the
stuff
same
I
issue.
put in my body
Oh, yeah?
when I was growing up, I guess it's fortunate God has kept me here without getting diabetes or something like that. But
Hey, whoa.
yes,
knock on-
knock on wood. That's right. I'm not dead yet, so there's still time. All right. Before we get started on the news, Fred, this is a great week for us. We have a partnership going on. A lot of our listeners have heard on this show and other shows us talking about something we're doing, giving away.
Yes, sir. For the 25th year in a row, American Family Radio teaming up once again for the National Truth for Youth Bible Week right here at American Family Radio all this week. Now, what does this mean? Well, Revival Fires International is giving one free Truth for Youth Bible to every student between the ages of 13 and 18. And all you have to do to get that free Bible is to, ensure that you pass it along to a friend at your school. Now, this is a wonderful evangelism tool. And Tim Todd, who heads up Revival Fires, we had him in studio earlier this week talking about, and people say, numbers, but numbers mean something, folks. In the course of this 25-year relationship that we've had with the National Truth for Youth folks, over 1 million Bibles have been passed out. Over 1 million. And at least 30,000 young people that we are aware of have given their lives to Christ. So you talk about a powerful, powerful tool that God can use to get the gospel out to young people, as we say, who normally perhaps would not be exposed to the gospel.
Right.
Because these kids who get the free Bible during this week, they agree they're going to pass it on. So, and there's just tremendous testimonies that we have heard. I was listening to some yesterday, more of these testimonies of a young girl who was drug addiction, all of that sort of thing, changed her whole life. So, folks, this is an incredible deal. So have a listen. Truth for Youth Bible consists of an entire New Testament and full-color comics that present the gospel and moral truths. Over 1 million, as I say, have already been given away. And we want to give away this week, folks, 65,000. That's our goal.
Right.
65,000 Bibles. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's real simple. You call this number, folks, 800-733-4737. 800-733-4737. Now, the phones will ring at a center in Louisiana where Revival Fires is based, and they will take your call. 800-733-4737, or you can go TFY.org. TFY.org. And as I say, the goal this year is 65,000. Folks, I think most of our listeners are familiar with this because, as I said, we've been doing this for 25 years. But don't take your foot off the accelerator,
right,
folks. And there's a whole new batch of kids out there every year that you can take advantage of. As we were saying yesterday, guys, this is a wonderful way also for mom and dad, for grandparents who may want to get this for a grandson, granddaughter. It's a wonderful way to introduce them to, hey, here's a way to share the gospel with people.
And it's totally legal.
Totally legal.
Totally legal for a teenager to hand a Bible to another teenager.
Yeah.
Because kids hand things to kids all the time.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with it. And you cannot say, well, you can hand whatever you want, but you can't hand a Bible. It is absolutely legal, constitutional for young people to do.
And this is our way of getting the Bible and God's Word back in public schools the legal way. And that's what we're doing. Another thing, too, if you think about it, for us to go back for a moment and think about when we were teenagers and young adults, so many times when you're in middle school and high school, you don't just wake up and go, what is the good news? But so many times it's an issue that occurs, a moral issue that happens that ends up leading you down a road of why is this wrong? Or what's the better alternative? And the moral issues of our day when you're a teenager and in high school can ultimately lead to the good news and the gospel and why it matters in God's word. And so for this Truth for You, the Bible, to be very specific with the comics on moral issues such as transgenderism, such as drug addiction, such as pornography, a broken family. I know there's a comic in there on that. And so it having a biblical answer to the difficult issues in which teenagers face, it could not be more appropriate for this effort. And so we again, if we've been doing this for 25 years, we trust them. We trust Tim Todd. He was on campus yesterday. Well, most of our audience, if you were listening yesterday, you heard him. So we're really excited about this. Our number, we want to get to 65,000 this week, and you can call in at 800-733-4737, and all the information. They'll have any more information that you need there, or you can go to tfy.org, and I'm seeing all the details there. And so help us get the Truth for Youth Bible back in public schools by following those, going to that website or calling that number.
Now, the phone number that you're calling, 800-733-4737, that is a number to call between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. Central Time. So if you want to go outside those hours, you would need to go to the website or wait till tomorrow. So tfy.org.
One more point to make. If you want to make this a youth group project,
right.
I think it's for $2 a Bible. A box of 50 can be sent to your youth group.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you can hand those out. Same number, 800-733-4737.
Wait a minute. They have Truth for You Spanish Bibles also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We did a story on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
in English, but yes.
That's
the story was in English.
Okay, well, that's
my Spanish is not bueno.
And by the way, if you go to afr.net for American Family Radio, afr.net, front and center is this campaign this week, and you can click through and visit the site to go directly to the Revival Virus.
Well, that's good news.
National.
That's good news.
Amen. Good news. All right, Chris, get us started with the news. By the way, folks, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, will be with us at the bottom of the hour. So we'll be talking with her about some of the news of the day. Just a little tease for the bottom of the hour. All right, Chris, go ahead.
President Donald Trump is threatening a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. after an attack on a man described as a former Doge worker. The victim has been identified as Edward Korestein. Police say he was assaulted around 3 a.m. Sunday in the city's Logan Circle neighborhood by a group of teenagers attempting to carjack him and a woman whom police identified as his significant other. 2 15-year-olds have been arrested in this. There may be more arrests in the coming days. Meanwhile, President Trump says this is one of many incidents, negative instances, in Washington, D.C., and he wants something done about it, to the point that maybe the feds are going to take over Washington, D.C. and how it governs itself. Clip 4.
Somebody from Doge was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
Well, Fred, I'm not sure how legal it would be to federalize Washington, D.C., but it is clear that blue cities like D.C. are dropping the ball in terms of prosecution, just in terms of bail, where some of these young people, as President Trump calls them thugs, they are absolutely thugs. If they're, first of all, trying to carjack, and then they're beating up people who do not comply, this is a direct result. It's a result of a number of cultural factors that are going on and have been going on for decades. But this is, in terms of almost opening the jail doors, the fact that a lot of these prosecutors in deep blue cities will not keep accused lawbreakers in jail. Yeah. They let them right back out on the street. These thugs don't think anything's going to happen to them. Yeah. And they continue not only to commit these crimes, but in brutal fashion.
Absolutely. And it's sad, our nation's capital, the state that it's in right now, where criminals run free. The beating up of this young man on the weekend, this is not an isolated incident. Earlier this summer, an intern who was in D.C. for the summer was killed in the crossfire, gang-related, I think, crossfire, that this young man died. You know, I saw his mom being interviewed, and she said, we thought D.C. was a safe place for our son to go. I mean, that's the image that when you look at the buildings, you know, it's a wonderful place for a young person to go. But it is a dangerous place. I haven't been to D.C. for a while, but the last time I was there, it was scary. The homeless problem. Right. And all of that, what that brings. And I mean, almost on the doorstep of the White House. So D.C. is in a mess. It really is. And I remember being up there a few years ago. I was nervous to travel on a bus.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't go on the subway now.
Unless you're in a large group of 15, 20 people. Right. But yeah, definitely. You know, another thing, too, there's a direct correlation, too, with the increase in crime where there is the strictest gun laws. And then obviously, well, I say obviously, kind of taking us off a little bit, but I'll come back. 93% of mass shootings take place in gun-free zones. And so this idea of not being able to defend yourself, and then also, you know, a lot of times these deep blue cities also don't want to defund the police. They're creating an environment where this is normalized and more like a slap on the wrist. They just don't see it being as big of an issue until it's them.
Right.
Until the lawmakers or the politicians or the judges, until they come to their community, and then they're hit with either a carjacking or a protest outside their house, where it turns into a riot or vandalism. Until that happens, in most of these situations like this, you're going to find a couple things that are common factors. They are very strict on the Second Amendment, almost to the point where it's eliminated, like D.C. Right. D.C. and New York City are essentially gun-free zones, by and large, if you look at their policies. So you have that as a factor.
Well, for law-abiding
citizens. For law-abiding, yes, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. I would have pointed that out if you'd have said the same thing, yes. Also, too, you're going to see in these places, the criminals or thugs, they're going to have a long rap sheet.
Yes.
So they're going to have a rap sheet where they have been either probably not even arrested, just written a fine. In some cases, they don't even take them in. And so you're going to see some of these common factors. That's why I believe as we go on down the road here in history, I believe the blue cities are going to get bluer and the red cities are going to get redder because of, is redder a word?
Yeah,
more red,
more red, more blue.
And it's because of this type of instance.
I'm not sure if Trump would succeed in that effort, but it is interesting that his choice for the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia is Jeanine Pirro.
Yes.
And she was approved by the Senate just last week. And she's a rough, tough judge from New York. And you probably have seen her on Fox over the last couple of years. I think she's going to make a big difference.
All right, let me ask you guys, because I could look this up, but somebody here has the answer. So D.C. has its own court system, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not all like Jeanine Pirro would not be prosecuting crimes like the one we're discussing. I mean, there's a police force, but there are city prosecutors. Am I right on that?
Yes.
You wouldn't have to have a federal prosecutor, would you?
No, I don't. At least not as far as what I'm looking at. The District of Columbia has a court system that handles both local and federal matters.
Okay.
While it's not a traditional city court system, the District of Columbia courts fulfill a similar role for the district. So they do handle some local matters.
Okay. So a carjacking would not. Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you, Fred, about Jeanine Pirro. She's going to be great. Your mention of her just raised this question in my mind.
Yep.
Would she be the one who then turns and says, "Well, we're going after these people and no bail"? It seems like those are.
However, if there was a federal lawsuit by a victim's family,
Yeah.
A civil rights issue or that sort of thing, she would be involved with that.
Yeah. Right.
So I think there is a new avenue for people to deal with the problem.
My own opinion is that until this country, if this country has an awakening and we have a restoration of sane thinking, going forward, we're going to have more prisons. We're going to have do a better job with mentally ill people, thinking about the homeless issue. Of course, not all homeless people are mentally ill, but a large percentage of them probably are, or drug addicted. And that was the other thing. We're going to have a better way of handling drug addiction so that you don't put people who are trying to get free from drugs into the penal system or the mental health field, because the country is just corrupted by these things, by crime, by mental illness and homelessness, and by drugs. And we're going to have to isolate these people. You mentioned long rap sheets, Wesley. If these people are going to have to go somewhere and not get out until they serve their time, and some way of trying to get them through a process where they can get job skills and maybe not go back into crime. High recidivism rates are a problem. I don't know what the percentage is of Americans who are in those three categories that I was mentioning, but we're going to have to do a better job of separating these individuals from the rest of society and getting them help, or if they don't want help, you just keep them in.
I'll make one more comment on this issue or this conversation here, and that's this. If you check all of this back, understand we're talking about a very specific crime in a very specific location, and then we kind of back up from there. Ultimately, and we need to do all these things that we mentioned here, but ultimately, if you want to go back 20 or 30 or 40 years, the reason the crime rate's the way it is because there's been an attack by the Democratic Party on the nuclear family. And you're going to find so many of these criminals like this never had a dad growing up.
Yeah.
They had a broken family. And the few that you go, well, there's an exception here, you're going to find out they had two dads or two moms.
Right.
And so just the attack, that has been the number one divisive tool if you come back to it. And I know I've said this over the years, but there is a great assault, purposeful, by the Democratic Party on the nuclear family as it is from the Bible or Judeo-Christian views from our tradition, we've had issues throughout our country, and we have dealt with them, and we haven't been perfect, but we have been exceptional. We've been the best country, in my opinion, for hundreds of years. However, the most recent, meaning the last 10, 20 to 30 years of the attack on the nuclear family is, I think, gonna ultimately look back and be one of the most devastating things to our country.
I looked around. Approximately 0.8% of the U.S. population is currently incarcerated somewhere, state, federal, or local jails.
0.7?
0.7%. That translates to about 700 people per 100,000.
Okay, now they are incarcerated.
Yes.
So that does not take into account
This guy.
This
rap sheet. He's running the
ones
streets.
with rap sheets. And we talk about this all the time. And some of them are illegal immigrants, and some of them are U.S. citizens. Yeah. But we're always shocked that this person who did crime X, had been arrested 16 times.
Yeah.
And was back out on the street, and so. It would be, I'm sure people that study the criminal justice system have all these kinds of numbers and stats, but it would be interesting to know what percentage of people, just even with the homeless and the drug addiction, we talked about yesterday or the day before about the new drug that is afflicting the U.S., more lethal, more potent than fentanyl. I mean, so... These are things that erode the substructure of a culture. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, as you said, Wesley, the attack on the family kicked all this off. Mm-hmm. This started it, triggered it.
So President Trump threatening D.C. takeover of Washington, D.C. there. That comes a week-ish after his executive order. This was on a Friday, ending crime and disorder on America's streets. I'll post this link on our Facebook page. But for those not aware of what I'm talking about here, at the end of July, President Donald Trump signed an executive order he said aims to end crime and disorder on America's streets. This is really going after a lot of homelessness and drug addiction. There are people that are homeless who are battling drug addiction. Trump is actually calling for state and local authorities to be able to just take somebody and commit them, even if they don't want to be committed. Because in his concerns here, he talks about how a number of people have been harmed by people on the street who may or may not be battling a drug addiction as well.
Well, and part of the problem here, and this is what President Trump, I think he has the right idea of wanting to see these kinds of problems at least fenced in some way and have some of this drained out of our inner cities. But what he's going to run into are the leaders of blue states and blue cities who like this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're all in favor of it because they favor the criminals' rights over the rights of victims. They favor the rights of the homeless and drug addicts on the street over those that are sometimes assaulted. And by the way, I'm sure there are some, again, I don't know the percentages of those who are homeless because they lost a job, and that's what the social safety net should be for. Mm-hmm. But there's an awful lot that are mentally ill or on drugs, and even some blue cities are tired of it. Mm-hmm. So maybe that'll be enough to turn the tide on some of this at least. All right, we're going to take a short break here at the bottom of the hour. When we return, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, will be joining us. And we're going to be talking about Texas and what's going on. She had a great interview on her show this morning. Some of the stuff she found out in this interview were shocking. We'll be talking with her when we come back. Hope you'll join us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
As a student at Emory University in Atlanta, I used to occasionally go down to the First Methodist Church to hear the minister, the late Pierce Harris, preach. For many years, Dr. Harris served the church as minister, and his Sunday evening services were attended by people from all over the country. Dr. Harris once told a very dramatic and moving story about an incident which happened to him during his ministry. He was invited once to speak at a prison work camp. The prisoners were out in the open, and Dr. Harris had to speak from the bed of a truck. When it came time to introduce the speaker, one of the prisoners mounted the truck bed to make the introduction. The prisoner began his introduction by telling a story. Several years ago, he stated, 2 boys lived in the same community of North Georgia. They attended the same school, played with the same bunch of boys, even went to the same Sunday school. The prisoner continued, but one of the boys dropped out of the Sunday school because he felt he had outgrown it and that it was sissy stuff. The other boy kept going because he felt it was meaningful for his life. You know, one stops at that point in the prisoner's introduction to do a little bit of thinking. What makes people drop out of Sunday school? I guess that the answer to that question is as varied as there are those who drop out. While often part of the reason is the way in which Sunday school is conducted, most of the time it's due to a lack of interest on the part of the dropout and or his parents. I guess many people don't value the worth of the Sunday school very much. If they did, they would stay with it even when it gets dry and dull, or even when it appears to be a little sissy. Another thing one thinks about is what causes people to go wrong, to break the laws of society by which people live. Again, one could say that sometimes the laws aren't just and the prisoners are only victims. However, incidents of that nature are very, very few in number. In the vast majority of cases, the person sets himself above the law and ignores it. Of course, society has an influence on each person in the choices that he makes. But in the final analysis, each person chooses for himself the route his life will follow. He can choose to obey the law or to ignore it. The prisoner on the bed of the truck concluded his introduction of Dr. Harris. The boy who dropped out of Sunday school, the prisoner said, stands before you today to introduce the speaker. The boy who stayed in Sunday school is the one who will speak. Don't let anyone kid you. Your relationship to the church does have a very definite influence on the outcome of your life. Just remember this. Church business isn't sissy kid stuff.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things that God has prepared for those who love Him. 1 Corinthians 2:9.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
And welcome back to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I am joined in studio by Fred Jackson, Wesley Wildman, and Chris Woodward. And now we want to welcome Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, heard weekdays at 7 a.m. Central Time on American Family Radio, and host of On Demand, her podcast. You can find that at afr.net. Jenna, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you guys as always.
Well, Jenna, I try to listen to your program every morning and have listened this week. And this morning, in fact, I even texted you during one of your breaks. You had a guest who was and is a legislator in Texas, Republican legislator in Texas. And I was astonished by this interview. First of all, let us know who the legislator was. This is all about what's going on in Texas. Kind of let us, just give us a 10,000-foot view of what you found out in this interview. And folks, I just really recommend that you go and listen to Jenna's interview this morning. I was kind of shocked at how the fact that Texas has a swamp too, I guess, is what your guest said. Who was it that you had on?
Yeah, so this is Representative Brian Harrison. You can follow him on X at Brian E. Harrison, and he's a Texas state rep for the 10th House District. And this is all about the controversy over the Democrats, reportedly 50 or more that have fled to Chicago and other places in order to escape quorum from being present at the House business sessions. And so they're effectively, the Democrats are trying to prevent a vote on the redistricting legislation, which Democrats have suggested is gerrymandering, and this is an attempt to manipulate getting more congressional seats. And regardless of their arguments on the merits and whether Republicans, can respond to that, the fact of the matter is these Democrats are in the minority in Texas, and they can't simply leave office and say, well, because we're leaving office, there's no quorum present, so now we can effectively prevent all of our colleagues from conducting business. So now Governor Greg Abbott, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, are trying to enforce some penalties for this. And so that's the whole controversy. But really, what I was shocked at as well, Ed, is that I had thought, based on just reports and what I'm seeing from Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton's X feeds and all of that, that Republicans were kind of shocked by this and Democrats just fled, and there was nothing really that Republicans could do other than now, after the fact, trying to impose some penalties. But what Representative Brian Harrison said this morning is that Republican leadership in Texas could have prevented this, but in the special session, gavelled out 7 minutes after they gavelled in the session to let the Democrats run down the hall, do a press conference, and basically collude with Hakeem Jeffries, who's, of course, the Democrat congressional leader in Washington, who was present in Texas to help them with this stunt. And so basically, Harrison was alleging that Republicans were in on this.
Yeah, I was stunned by it. And by the way, kudos to you. It was a wonderful interview you conducted with Representative Harrison. I've been laboring under the expectation that this was just another Democratic Party stunt. Texas, they did this, I think, in 2021. This is not unusual for them to flee the state, and therefore they're not, quote unquote, in to allow a quorum. But it was the Republican establishment cooperation with this stunt that was astonishing to me. And The fact is, I think that Brian Harrison said that when the Speaker of the House said any objections, he shouted out, "I object," and the Speaker of the House ignored him and gavelled closed the session, allowing the Democrats to go to across to have this meeting with Hakeem Jeffries. I was astonished by that kind of cooperation. I also didn't know, maybe you can speak to this, and then Fred and Wesley will let you guys jump in. I didn't know that the Republicans in the House allow Democrats to co-chair committees.
Oh, yeah. And that's been happening for a long time, and was what part of the outrage during Ken Paxton's just ridiculous impeachment trial. This has been going on for a really long time in the state of Texas, that because there are such a majority in the state of Republican voters, a lot of Democrats will run as Republicans so that they'll get elected. And then the leadership in the Texas State House will even give elected Democrats some of these leadership positions and these co-chairs, and it's utterly preposterous because that's not actually effectively serving the constituency. So that's been going on for a really long time. I wasn't aware of this allegation that Speaker Burrows and others were potentially just in on this. And my question for him was, was this something that really could have been prevented? Was this in on it, as in Speaker Burrows was supportive of this move to break quorum? even though then the next day when they didn't come back, he came out and advanced civil warrants, against the Democrats, so was this something where he just kind of wanted the national attention from it, which I think seems a little more likely. That because this has now gotten national attention and prominence, and people like you and me and other conservatives are saying, yay, Texas is finally doing something about this. Did they enable the scenario where now they can get national attention to then impose some of these consequences? So is there more to the story than is being let on? And so it was a very eye-opening interview, and just to me, Ed, really proves a point that we can't just pay attention to what national media is saying about an issue that's going on state level. We really need to talk to people on the ground.
Right.
It's interesting, just to follow up on Ed's question with regards to Republicans appointing Democrats to committees. Are Republicans really under some kind of illusion that if they're nice to Democrats, that Democrats will be nice to them?
Well, I hope not. I mean, that would be a very false and ridiculous assumption, but it's inexplicable why Republicans are ceding their power to Democrats, other than the fact that clearly they're Republicans in name only. And so these are people who clearly haven't been vetted on the state level, either during primaries or even during general elections, that are voted in as supposedly Republicans. So the presumption is they will act according to those allegiances. And then they go off and their allegiance perhaps is more to the Democrat Party. So this is the classic scenario of a rhino, R-I-N-O, or Republican in name only. So this is why Texas really has a lot of, some expulsions to do, at least at the ballot box.
This is Wesley here. I want to know, how can we as Republicans do what they're doing? How can we go? I'm just kidding. Everybody's looking around like, I don't think. No, that would be lying. Okay, our conscience wouldn't let us do that. But
run as a Democrat. I think we'd get struck by lightning in Mississippi.
Right. I know. Well, you saw where I was going with that. I have had thoughts at times. I'm like, I ultimately come back to, that's lying. We can't do that as a Christian. But I often go, man, it would be cool if a guy runs as a Democrat in a moderate area that leans Democrat and then goes in and all of a sudden becomes a conservative. Now, that may happen on occasion. You'll see some that shift from left to moderate.
It's happened a lot in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it has. Yeah,
Fetterman, I think John Fetterman is a great example of that.
But he didn't go in.
Well, but he went in and was elected as a Democrat when everybody was thinking he's going to be possibly the worst option, and he's kind of one of the most based, members of the Senate right now, and I think has actually been potentially better even than Dr. Oz would have been.
Yep. One of the things also, again, folks, I just really encourage you to go check out Jenna's show this morning, the podcast of it. Listen to the segment. I think, was that the first or second segment? That was the second segment. Her interview with Texas Representative Brian Harrison. It was eye-popping. But one of the things I heard Representative Harrison say, he listed all these other things that can be done to these Democrats that may not rise to the level. I don't know whether it's legal to vacate their seats or whatever. I'm sure we'll find that out in the coming days. But he said you can cut pay for their staff. I mean, he listed 4 or 5 great things that could be done, that you could strip them of any of their leadership assignments, all kinds of things, if you had the will to do it. That was pretty eye-opening, that there are weapons, so to speak, in the hands of strong Republican leadership to punish the Democrats who have fled the state. It just depends on whether there's strong leadership in the Republican Party.
Isn't that always the way? I mean, it really depends on whether the person who wields the power is willing to effectively use it for disciplinary purposes. And this is for the House, and they have rules and procedural penalties for things like that. And you're right, we'll see in the forthcoming days whether Governor Abbott's appeal to the Texas Supreme Court to acknowledge vacancies, and the purpose for that, not only could then he make vacancy appointments, but also vacancies then would lower the threshold for quorum in order to get business done. So the response from the Democrats is due for the Texas Supreme Court on Friday. So we'll probably see, sometime next week what the decision is on that. But the House, in order, I mean, just like any house, like you're in my house, we have to have rules in order to maintain discipline for the people who are members of the household. And in the same way, the House has its own rules and procedural penalties. They can compel attendance. That's Article 3, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution. And that actually was used in 2021. You mentioned, Ed, when Democrats fled before when that House Speaker signed civil arrest warrants for missing members. And we didn't really see any arrests, though, in that case, right? Because they didn't follow through on that. You can do censures or reprimands. You can strip committee assignments or seniority privileges, which Republicans should probably do anyway for these Democrats. You can impose a daily fine. The House can adopt a rule imposing monetary penalties for each day absent without a justification. And you can deny quorum breakers recognition. So, don't allow them on the floor or legislative privileges. You can move their offices. You can cut pay to their staff. I mean, there's all kinds of things. But it seems like the Republicans are more interested in just the national headlines. As Representative Harrison put it, we need to see action, not words.
Well, and one last thing. One of the things that Representative Harrison said was that the Republicans who are in control of the legislature could have done this while they were in session. They could have handled this, but they postponed it. And then a special session, if I've got this right, the chronology, a special session had to be called, and that's when the Democrats fled. If I've got that right, why didn't the Republicans deal with this when they were in session?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I spoke actually with another member of the House. I won't reveal who that is just because it was a private conversation. But I did speak with another member of the House that said that you need a quorum to do any business with gaveling in. And the reason that they had to do a call of the House is because they didn't have a quorum even when they gavelled in. And the legislation was not up, according to this representative, for a vote, still had to be assigned to committee, and that was supposed to happen Friday. So a little bit of a contradiction there as to the timeline of what Representative Harrison was saying, because you're right. I was under the impression after the interview that if they hadn't gavelled out, then they could have just called for the vote right then, got the business taken care of, and then, if Democrats want to leave for Chicago after that, fine, go have a vacation. Right. So I think there's a little bit of disparity there, but I think the question should be raised, why did they gavel out and allow this instead of at least assigning the committees and, some of those other things?
All right, Jenna, any kind of a foretaste of what you'll be dealing with here the rest of the week?
Yeah, I'm really excited for the podcast that's dropping this Friday on demand. I have a really great guest, and we are talking about this headline. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but an embryo that was frozen since 1994 has now just been born. A baby boy has been born that's basically 31 years old. Wow. And so this is the oldest on record. And it raises so many implications for the sanctity of life, the agency of a human being made in the image of God. So we do a really in-depth interview. In fact, I just got done recording this moments before joining this program, a really in-depth interview on some of the ethical questions and where science maybe goes too far beyond the biblical worldview, where those parameters are, and some questions that need to be raised. So I thought that was a really fascinating subject and something that we need to be concerned with as Christians.
That is fascinating. That'll be your Friday on-demand podcast. Yes. Folks, you can check that out at afr.net. And the further and the faster technology and medical knowledge progresses, the more ethical questions that's going to raise. I just didn't even know that was possible. A 31-year-old fertilized embryo, and then now the baby's born. Listen, that's going to be that's going to be a knock it out of the park kind of podcast. So thank you for dealing with those kinds of issues too. Those aren't always the easiest to kind of sift through, and so looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And that's why I love also having, the radio show to deal with, the news of the day issues, and we kind of do these, quick hitting, 15-minute segments. But the on-demand podcast lets me do, a deeper dive, because that's a topic that you can't cover in, 10 or 15 minutes.
Right.
You have to go deeper. So I really appreciate that we have both formats here at AFR, and that you let me talk for, more than the hour on air.
Absolutely.
So
you do a great job. It was a great job on the interview. I got to work after your interview with Representative Harrison, so I didn't get a chance to listen to the rest of your program. But you do a great job on these interviews, and appreciate it. Thank you, Jenna.
Really appreciate it, guys. Have a great day.
All right, you too. That is Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the morning. Anybody have any comments about that?
No one looked at me like I was wrong for wanting to disguise as a Democrat. I just kind of sat there. I didn't get judged one bit.
Well, listen,
I needed to be judged on that because I was tempted.
Let me just clue you in on a little something, Wesley. You would get away with that for about 60 seconds. As soon as you open up your as soon as you opened up your mouth, everyone would go, "This guy ain't no Democrat."
There ain't no.
It's so. By the way, Fred, we talked about this topic and what we're going to discuss with Jenna in our story meeting this morning. Was it you that had the stats from? I think it was it Illinois and maybe California?
Illinois.
Illinois, in terms of how they district their state. And here you have Democrats in Texas complaining. What was that?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. The governor of Illinois, Pritzker, has been there with the Democrats from Texas and holding news conferences.
Yes.
And Texas
outraged.
They're racist. This is highly unlawful what they're doing down there, and threat to democracy. Yes. I've got all the Democrat talking points. Yeah. All right, so that they throw in there. And the hypocrisy meter is pegged 100%, because Illinois, I want you to listen to this. Illinois, Democrats, because they jerry-rigged up there like crazy.
Yeah.
Democrats control 82.4% of the state's House seats.
Right.
They maneuvered everything around, and you can probably find this online. What they had to do in order to achieve this. When you think of districts, sometimes you think a nice square block.
Yeah.
Yeah. These look like the trail of a deer through the woods. Some of these districts, if you want to follow it. Democrats control 82.4% of the state's House seats, though in the election last year, they won only 52.8% of the House popular vote in those districts. President Trump, the Republicans, they still won 43.5% of the vote.
But have access only to 18% of the the House seats.
Yes. Likewise, some of these Democrats have gone to Massachusetts. Boy, Jerry Rig on steroids once again. They maneuvered things. Not one Republican holds a seat.
Well, that's because there are no Republicans in Massachusetts, right? Nobody voted for Republicans.
Hey, Mitt Romney got elected.
No.
A long time ago.
Nobody voted for President Trump in the 2024 election, right?
Well,
wrong.
This is
wrong.
And so, folks, when you see these news conferences by these Democrats with these Democrat governors from these various states, Hochul in New York, she's doing the same thing. This is total hypocrisy. And you got to remember that. Unfortunately, the mainstream media does not cover it, does not tell you this, does not tell you that Illinois and New York and Massachusetts, they've all done the same thing when they're in power. The Democrats are in power.
Yep.
They do exactly the same thing.
Yep.
So don't believe these charges that you're hearing from these guys.
Well, and Massachusetts was very similar. I say similar. Candidate Trump in 2024 received 36% of the vote in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you say, well, that's far from a majority. Yes. but there are no Republicans in the state house.
You think with 36% voting for Trump, there would have been at least one Republican.
Yeah.
Just one.
But the reason they're
unless you gerrymander.
Yes, gerrymander. By the way, was it Eldridge Jerry? That I think Jerry, the last name. This goes all the way back to the early 1800s. He was one of the first to do gerrymandering, and the mander comes from the word salamander, because that is what the district looked like when it was gerrymandered.
Yes.
So we refer to gerrymandering. That's where that comes from. But it is redistricting, and the party in power, the expectation is they will gerrymander the districts to give them the greatest chance of having political control. So that's why we say to Texas and the GOP there, don't apologize for what you're doing.
No, and the Supreme Court has approved this. Basically, the party in power has the right to do this.
Right.
Now, the Democrats don't like it in Texas because Republicans are in power right now. But these cases have gone all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yep.
And the Supreme Court says it's up to the state.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, vote differently.
Yeah.
Or convince your fellow citizens to vote differently.
Yeah.
Did you know that Elbridge Gerry was a vice president?
I think that's right. I think when I looked this up, that's not off the top of my head. I think I looked it up earlier in the week or over the weekend.
I was today years old when I found that out.
Yeah.
He was the fifth vice president
for the
of the
Democrat / Republican Party. So you go, the further back you go, the weirder the political party alignments get. But that was, I think, the Democrat - Republican Party back then.
These are the same people that wore a powdered wig.
Yes.
Speaking of weird.
Yeah. All right, what else you got, Chris?
Well,
a few minutes.
Yeah, there is. We've talked a lot on the show about Zohran Mamdani, the socialist or communist,
who I'm pulling
who
for, by the way.
Yeah,
you're pulling for him
at this point.
Being a Democrat,
yes,
he's the radical that wants to become the next mayor of New York City. Now, we've talked a lot about him and we've aired sound bites of him, but I'll bring him up because there is apparently a Mamdani effect now in these United States of America, to the point that in Seattle, on the West Coast, or left coast, as some people like to call it, there's a lady named Katie Wilson, that's running for mayor, and she is being viewed. Yeah, she's being viewed as a Mamdani-like mayoral candidate. She's running for mayor there, wanting to unseat the current mayor. I pulled up her party platform here. Among the things that are front and center on her campaign website, Katie Wilson for mayor, she wants to Trump-proof Seattle. So that tells you right there where she is in terms of politics.
Now, I wouldn't want that as a president or on a national level, but you need a couple of those. You need a couple of those Zuranians. You need a couple of them of the Zohran
Mamdani.
Yeah. I'm being funny. He's a politician, okay?
Right?
But we need a couple of those examples throughout our country so we can look to. And said this didn't work. They tried it.
Yeah,
it fell apart. He just defunded New York Police Department.
Yeah,
and it was already bad, and now it's worse.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I jokingly say I'm pulling for him at this point, because if there's that many by polls, which we know can go like this, and who's doing the polling, but he is polling at 35%.
Yeah.
As of 2 days ago when I looked. So if he's polling that high at this point, I'm like, if it's not like a close one, I'm like, you know what? If they want that, go for it.
Because we're all gonna. It's the old saying. Just give me a bucket of popcorn. I'm gonna watch New York City.
Yes, that's right.
Become a third world habitat.
Even more so.
Yeah,
even more so.
So I'm with you, because it seems like the Democratic Party is moving in this direction, kind of this Mamdani effect. Well, we had Elizabeth Warren yesterday.
Yes,
so we're all for it.
Yeah. She was there patting him on the back,
literally
patting him on the back,
and saying this is what the Democratic Party needs to be. So sometimes you got to learn the hard way, and as long as it's not in my neck of the woods.
That's right.
Massachusetts, you'll be the experiment. We'll put you in a test tube. All right, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break for news. And when we come back, more of today's issues.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family,
freedom. American Family Radio.
Sometimes being an insider means you understand the joke that only certain ones really know. Other times, it gets you into exclusive places. As an AFA insider, you'll get information about issues and policies that can dramatically impact our families and our Christian rights. And you won't have to travel to D.C. or even dress up to get it. Find out more and sign up at afa.net/activism.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty P. Israel is considering its next course of action as the war with Hamas continues. Trey Yingst reporting from Tel Aviv.
The war. This all started on the morning of October 7th, and we knew at that moment, reporting from southern Israel, that the Israelis were going to invade Gaza. But the question now is whether or not they're going to occupy the Gaza Strip. And reports this week indicate that the Security Cabinet will meet tomorrow night in Jerusalem to decide on that very question. And if they decide to move forward with an occupation of Gaza, it raises a lot of very important questions. One, about the fate of the remaining 50 hostages that remain in Hamas captivity, 20 of them who are believed to be alive, but also what the plan is to end this conflict, because there are two major Israeli goals: to bring the hostages home and to defeat and destroy Hamas. And nearly 700 days in, the Israeli military has not been able to do so.
A former staffer at the Department of Government Efficiency is recovering after being attacked by a mob in D.C. earlier this week.
The 19-year-old former DOJ staffer known as Big Balls was beaten by a violent mob of minors in the nation's capital in a popular part of town, according to police. A 15-year-old man and a 15-year-old woman were arrested and charged with unarmed carjacking. The attack prompted President Trump to post, "Crime in Washington, D.C. is totally out of control. Local youths and gang members, some only 14, 15, and 16 years old, are randomly attacking, mugging, maiming, and shooting innocent citizens. The most recent victim was beaten mercilessly by local thugs." Trump warned if crime is not dealt with properly, he may be forced to take over.
New data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York shows a dramatic increase in people who are seriously late with their student loan payments. Jerry Willis has more.
In just 3 months, the percentage of student loans that are more than 90 days overdue jumped from 8% at the end of March to 12.9% at the end of June. An explosion in seriously late payments. Now, this spike came after the Trump administration restarted collections on defaulted student loans in May, ending a 5-year pandemic-era pause. Borrowers owe a total of, get this, $1.64 trillion on student loans. Credit reporting agency TransUnion reported earlier this summer that 2 million student loan borrowers were at risk of having their wages garnished this summer because of late payments.
The Trump administration wants to drop abortion coverage from the list of medical benefits for veterans and their families. Chris Woodward has more.
Critics argue otherwise, but the Trump administration says the benefits are not needed. Carol Tobias of National Right to Life Committee agrees.
I'm glad that they are doing it. The VA put abortion into its health plan during the Biden administration. Funding for abortion through the VA was never authorized by Congress. So it's great that the Trump administration is finally taking care of this.
Tobias adds that polls have found that even people who support abortion do not think tax dollars should pay for abortion. I'm Chris Woodward.
The Coalition of Wisconsin Parents, concerned about those students saying they'll identify as the opposite sex, are seeking legal help to remedy the situation. More from Bob Kellogg.
Luke Berg of the Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty says in 2 prior cases, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that schools are required to allow transgenders to use whatever bathroom they identify with. He says the Institute filed an amicus brief on behalf of the coalition.
There are lots of students who have concerns about this. And so in a case against the Elkhorn School District, we submitted a number of declarations from parents who said, yeah, my children are now afraid to use the bathroom.
He reports a growing number of states are passing common sense bills upholding the original intent of Title IX to protect women against harassment and violence.
But there are also all the decisions recently holding that the Biden administration's Title IX rule, which lots of courts around the country held that rule was inconsistent with Title IX and violated the law in numerous ways.
The coalition consists of 102 parents of the Elkhorn Area School District, which is currently facing a similar lawsuit by a transgender student wanting to use the girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. I'm Bob Kellogg.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hello, my name is Andy Miller, and I'm the president of Wesley Biblical Seminary based in Ridgeland, Mississippi. We are developing trusted leaders for faithful churches, and we do that based in the authority of Scripture and in the reality that Christians can be transformed. We do that also through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. We'd love for you to learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary at wbs.edu, where we're developing trusted leaders for faithful churches.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back, everybody. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman this week. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Wesley Wildman, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Hey, good morning,
the world
everybody.
waits for Steve Jordahl to get here on the show. People, you got kind of rock star status with our listeners.
Yeah.
And there have been complaints when Tim has not mentioned your nickname, Paisley.
Well, and y'all don't forget, I came back from a donor event, meeting with our supporters, asking for this shirt to be posted on our store, our AFA store website.
Oh, I like that idea, actually.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
for sure about
Get
the
some
rock
royalties with an AFR logo
That's
on there.
for
Yeah.
sure about the
Steve
rock star
Jordahl
thing, but the
edition.
shirt,
Yeah.
I can see a Paisley
Jordahl
shirt in our
edition.
store. Absolutely.
Well, I will mention that to our marketing team. I don't know that they're going to go for that, but I wonder how many people you could get to buy a Jordahl edition, Paisley edition.
All right.
Of
Comments at
AFA.
AFA.net, folks.
Yeah. Yeah, you vote on it.
If we have, how many do we have to have before they take, like 100 people?
I don't know. It would
That's
be
right.
interesting. Let me just say this. You can't vote and then not buy one.
That's right. Yeah,
Or
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't
true.
vote and say, yeah, I think you
can't
should have a
trick us.
Paisley edition.
No,
because
we're-
then we're going to have them sitting in our
Yeah.
inventory. You got to
And we
buy
give
one.
away on trivia, though.
Yeah,
That's right. That's going to be the giveaway.
Give away the Paisley shirt. We could start something with that. I mean, people would say, why in the world are you wearing that? And it might catch on. Who knows?
Well, and then after this show, we'll forget about it.
Yes. Yeah, someone's going to have to
Until
remind
someone
me.
has to read the comments at AFA.net.
Yeah.
4
Yes.
people are going to
Yeah.
call in.
All right, Steve, get us
Hey.
started. What do you want to bring up
All right.
first?
Well, there's some breaking news. We're just seeing now that there is a active shooter. Police have confirmed this, and casualties have been reported at Fort Stewart near Savannah, Georgia. It's on the coastline, near the coastline in southern Georgia. Active shooter. As always with these things, we're going to find out a lot of information that's going to be inaccurate or premature. So we try not to pass a lot of that stuff on, but the situation is evolving and it's going to change over time. So at this point, all we know is that there are casualties reported according to several various news outlets, and that there's an active shooter. And it was shut down at 11:04 Eastern, exactly an hour and 3 minutes ago. So when they locked
Well,
the
it's
place
wise that we're not delving into and speculating, because there are all kinds of questions that will have to be answered.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes these things are domestic violence. Someone's been let go. Sometimes shooters have an agenda. All of that, hopefully, we'll get information in the hours ahead. And where can they go to check in terms of our own updates?
AFN.net. We will keep everybody posted right there about what's going on.
All right.
Meanwhile, there is a coalition of about a dozen blue states that is suing the Trump administration in an attempt to block a federal policy aimed at stopping the transgendering of children. So we talk about why the Democrats might have lost the 2024 election and the fact that they are going woke and all of this crazy transgender stuff, boys or girls, and they can swim with the boys or girls, and America pretty flat out said no, that's too much for us. But the Democrats are doubling down. A dozen states And I could list them: California, Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, Illinois, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C. All Democrat strongholds as far as their legal system.
Now, what are they suing to accomplish?
They want to void President Trump's executive order that said that you cannot perform transgender operations or give drugs to children.
Oh, my goodness. All right, look, and I'll toss this
Well, they need to win the presidency and then make their own executive order.
Right?
Well, listen, Biden, when he was elected, quote unquote, depending on what you believe about that in 2020, that's what he did.
Right.
He executive orders, and red states sued.
Yep.
So this is part of the American process. I will say this, Fred. I remember, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe longer, and I was at a retreat hosted by AFA. Alex McFarland spoke, and he said there are 3 existential threats to our constitutional republic. He said the homosexual movement, the LGBTQ movement, in terms of the pressure it was putting on Christians and churches, but also destroying the moral fabric. He said the cultural Marxist movement and the radical Muslim movement. And he said that these are worldwide threats, but threaten the United States. And lo and behold, the Democratic Party is in tune with all 3 of those. All three of those. And again, some people may disagree with Alex McFarland's assessment, but I think he's exactly right. These are 3 existential threats, and the Democratic Party loves all 3 of these movements.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, it's been predicted. I was just sitting here thinking as you were going through that, who was it that published a study, it was several years ago, about the characteristics that lead up to a fall of a nation? Do you remember that? I think you did something.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
You can remember Alex's stuff, but you can't remember your own writing.
I thought you were talking about somebody important. No, that was back in 2007. I studied through a couple of books. This was J.D. Unwin, who is an anthropologist, and Peter M. Sorokin, who is the founder of the sociology department at Harvard University. They had both independently written. Unwin in 1934 released his book, Sorokin in 1956. They had both studied the rise, prosperity, and decay and demise of 80 civilizations and cultures. And I wrote a couple of articles about what they found.
One of the ingredients was an openness to homosexuality.
Yes.
Breakdown of the traditional family. So right now, the Democratic Party, now there are some Democrats that would argue in our favor, actually, but I think the party as a whole is headed in the direction of ensuring that our civilization, our country, falls apart.
Yes.
I mean, that's...
So they can rebuild it
yes.
in their image, according to their ideology.
But it's not going to work because history has shown it will fail. I mean, and it comes right down to, it comes down to what God says is going to work and what doesn't work, and God doesn't change.
Right.
When a society rebels against God, there is going to be consequences. There will be consequences. And we're starting to see that now, off the top of the program today. We talked about what's going on in D.C. I just saw somebody has done a study. If D.C. was a state, right now, it would lead the nation in homicides.
Wow.
So you look at the results. We look at Chicago. We look at Illinois, Democrat-controlled both the city and the state. Look at the crime levels. And Democrats try to deceive the nation because they start redefining what a crime is. And they let people out, instead of assault with a deadly weapon, they break it down to a misdemeanor.
Right.
They do all kinds of things but it doesn't change the behavior on the ground. And that's what we're facing in these states. And it really is a fight. It really is a fight for, are you going to live by godly principles or are you going to live by Satan's principles?
Yeah.
That's what it's pretty black and white, quite frankly. And we have enough evidence right now. We don't have to wait for this to happen. We have enough evidence right now to see in these Democrat-run states, things are falling apart.
Yes. Yeah.
Democrats differ from Republicans in the same way that, well, I don't want to make that comparison yet, but Democrats believe everything that's wrong with this culture is outside influences on people that if they were just had enough money or enough this or that free stuff, they would be happy and that we wouldn't have any violence. We wouldn't have any problems. All would be solved. Republicans believe in personal responsibility, which means strong laws to keep me because I am capable of doing bad things, because within me lies, it's a godly view of mankind, that all have sinned.
Realistic.
It is realistic. But so we see whenever somebody does something wrong, it's not society's job to come along and provide them with more schooling or more free stuff so that we can appease them. It's society's job to hold them accountable for their personal responsibility. And like Fred was saying, exactly, godly principles work across the board. They work in politics. They work in society. You don't even have
home.
They work at home. You don't even have to necessarily put them in the Christian framework. Just the principles themselves. Truth is truth.
Right.
And it applies throughout.
Well, it is interesting. I was just tying it to what Alex McFarland said in that speech, that the Democratic Party is in love with all three of these movements. When I say radical Islam, I'm talking about the anti-Semitic protests and things like that we've seen on college campuses. I don't think you'd find many Democrats who publicly come out in favor of what Hamas did on October 7th, 2023, but they are in favor of a Muslim worldview in terms of Israel and so on and so forth. So, by the way, I do want to also clarify in the writings that I did for our magazine, it was homosexuality as an outgrowth of a sexual revolution, because I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of heterosexuals are sinning against God as well in terms of pornography and that kind of thing. All of that causing a decay in our culture. But excellent point, Steve, in terms of the Democrats doubling down.
So that's one of the reasons, probably the main reason they lost the election. But I got to tell you, they also ran maybe the worst candidate ever in Kamala Harris. Now, I don't know if Joe Biden, if he had run, would have been worse. A lot of people think he wasn't even there to run. But Kamala did run. And for the first time ever, the Teamsters union did not endorse a Democrat. It didn't endorse her. And some people might wonder why. Did they all of a sudden get conservative? Not really. Kamala made them really angry. I want you to hear, this is, we're going to hear from the Teamsters president who talks about one of his officers, a lady who went to a reception with Kamala Harris. This is cut 14.
And so they do a photo op line. She went to, I don't know if it was an Emily's List event the day before our general executive board, and Vice President Harris was there. And so they do a photo op line. So Joan goes in the line and Joan says, "I'm Joan Corey. I'm a vice president with the Teamsters Union." And she pointed her finger at Joan and said, "Teamsters better get on board." And so Joan says, "Excuse me? Yeah, Teamsters better get on board. I don't know why you haven't endorsed me yet." So she comes back and she tells me this, and I'm like, the nerve.
The nerve?
Well, they knew that she was serious about pointing the finger and saying Teamsters better get on board because she didn't cackle. So,
right.
So she was, listen, these kinds of people, this is why President Trump sometimes rubs people the wrong way, because he can be pretty gruff and pretty blunt. Well, he, in building and his projects in New York City, he was always dealing with these kinds of people, Teamsters or whatever kind of unions. These are people who you don't point the finger in their face, but you do have to get blunt with. And so sometimes when people say, President Trump, he says things the wrong way or whatever, I say he's a New York City street fighter, and this is the way. So this is interesting that Kamala Harris thought you better have the juice if you're going to point the finger at a vice president in the Teamsters. You better be able to bring the
disappeared Jimmy Hoffa, right?
But isn't that representative of how the Democrats think? That there are certain constituencies they're going to vote for us.
Right.
Remember what was
Republicans are that way too a little bit with social conservatives, but
remember what Joe Biden said on one of these talk shows? If you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Oh, yeah. That was in 2020.
I don't think he was kidding.
No.
I mean, there's an assumption that if you have black skin, you're going to vote Democrat.
Yeah. Right.
The other thing is I think we saw in Kamala Harris, we saw a candidate that you mentioned the cackle, and she came across as, looking forward, optimistic. It's positive. I'm here for the good stuff. But behind closed doors, we're hearing from her campaign that she was terrible to work for, and that this was more typical of her personality. With Donald Trump, it's Donald Trump 24/7.
Right.
He's not different to his employees, to his campaign, to
he's
the nation.
Very considerate to people that work for him. And
who's Kamala again? Why are we talking about her? How did she come up here?
Well, this is new. This is brand new that we found out that this is why the Teamsters didn't endorse Kamala Harris.
Yes. Gotcha. Okay.
I want to introduce you to a high school teacher in Denver, Colorado. Her name is Emily Poole. And Emily Poole is one of her favorite cultures is the Inca culture. She just is in love with the Inca culture. And she will admit that the Inca culture did practice child sacrifice, but, it was a kinder, gentler child sacrifice. Cut 15.
If we're just looking at Tawantinsuyu, the Quechua people of the Incan Empire, they practiced sacrifices like most other civilizations throughout history did in times of crisis. So famine, natural disasters. But the unique thing about the Quechua is that when you're looking at like the Incan civilization, you essentially have the elites and then you have everyone else. Sacrifices were volunteers from the elite class because they believed that the elites were closer to the gods and could therefore appease them better. Also, in terms of sacrifice, they were kind about it. Hear me out. Because the Inca would intentionally use coca leaves and would use chicha and would drug up the sacrifice and then leave them on a mountain, a cold, chilly mountain, to be exposed to the elements. Which, a volunteer sacrifice where you're heavily drugged before you die. Also, I can equate human sacrifice throughout history to so many things. And I think the fact that a lot of people are commenting, but the sacrifice is again indicative of the fact that you have received a quite white education because you are knowing them for the bad things that they have done and not all of the wonders that they accomplished.
Pay no attention to the child sacrifice over here.
Listen, that
they built a pyramid.
You have to stretch she's stretching the truth on in a number of ways. She's conflating. First of all, yes, all ancient civilizations had sacrifices, not child sacrifices. Some did, with in the land of Canaan, for example, in terms of the biblical record. But most societies did not. Her implication is that most societies practice human sacrifice. That is hogwash. And then this whole idea that it was the elite only who were sacrificed. The Spanish, when they were conquering the Incas, were horrified to discover that if they captured one of them in battle, they were sacrificed. The Incas sacrificed their enemies. No, she is correct. Some of this was the practice of ritualized human sacrifice, but it wasn't just volunteers who had their hearts cut out. Okay, this was their enemies, and they conquered other civilizations, and when they took captives, they were also sacrificed. And then to toss race into it.
Yeah, it's awful white of you to notice that.
Yes, to say that you have had a whatever. What was her expression there at the end?
Education.
A white education. They get very tiresome with all of this kind of stuff. I've done some reading on the Incas. They were savage, and this wasn't just volunteers. Okay, I don't know where she's getting that it was only volunteers. I don't know. What do you guys think? You guys
need to avoid her.
Human sacrifice, or what?
I think if you're a dude and you're living in the area and you're single, you need to avoid her, dating her. That's what I think. That would be a miserable dinner.
Where does she teach?
That's funny.
At Cherry Creek School District in Denver, Colorado. It's a pretty
What's her name again?
Emily Poole.
She's a high school teacher?
High school teacher.
So that means the kids are getting this garbage.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And so Emily Poole, she teaches where?
Cherry Creek School District in Denver.
So
Cherry Creek, it's an affluent part of Denver.
When you're requesting teachers, those in Denver, can we get to Denver with our radio? I know we got apps. I know we got the app and we got the internet.
I was trying to look her up to see how old she is.
No,
because that is a fun comment there.
Yeah, I'm guessing she's sounding like she was in her 20s or 30s. I don't know if
she is.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of her. If you go to TikTok and look at,
I'm not going to TikTok. They practice child sacrifice. All right, Fred. What do you think? This. Listen, kids are being taught this garbage.
Yes, and this, on the, I guess the serious side, mom and dads, you need to be aware that this isn't just a single example. I keep going back to what happened days after October 7, 2023. We had hundreds of students on U.S. university campuses demonstrating for Hamas.
Yeah.
Right.
Demonstrating against Israel, despite the fact that 1,200 Israeli men, women, and children have been massacred. It's almost wake up America.
Yeah.
Understand. The things that we talk about each day on this program, that we deal with American Family News, this isn't just regular stuff. We're living in a culture right now. We're living in a world where Satan is and his forces are very much alive. I believe because Satan knows his time is short.
Yeah.
And we are seeing the thing that we have to be aware of now. This evil has always been around, but it's not hidden anymore, folks.
That's true.
I just go back to Israel for a second. I mentioned this at our story meeting this morning. The Wall Street Journal has an editorial this morning, and they quote a Hamas leader who basically says, what we did on October 2023 has worked.
Yeah.
He's proud of it. And what he's referring to is Western leaders, like the Prime Minister of Canada, like Macron in France, like the Prime Minister UK, in the last several days have endorsed the idea of a Palestinian state. A Palestinian state would just be another Hamas-led state.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
They also succeeded on every American college campus.
Yes. So, we're not exaggerating here, folks. This is reality. This is what's happening. This is why we try to warn people about, you better be careful about what your kid is learning at school.
Right.
You better be talking to them when they come home. What'd you learn today? Yeah. What are they telling you there? If you see evidence,
absolutely
act on it.
Yeah, what I learned today, Mom and Dad, is that human sacrifice was not as bad as we were led to believe.
So bad.
Yeah. All right.
We got another one.
Do you have something that you can
some people can sing, some people can't. The people in Boulder, Colorado, in British Columbia, they were listening.
Pick on Canadians.
They were out and they were hearing somebody cry desperately for help. Help! We need help. They couldn't quite understand what the guy was saying, so they sent out a search party. The search party went and looked, and they finally found somebody. But it was a guy sitting there singing rock and roll songs. He just couldn't sing. They thought it was a cry for help.
From the Beatles, help?
Well, no,
I need somebody?
Actually, from the band Nickelback.
Oh, okay. Not so far back as the Beatles, I guess.
No, but yeah. It sounded like a cry for help. You just couldn't sing.
So they sent people to look?
Yeah, they sent search teams out. The guys...
That sounds like something that would happen to me, honestly. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this edition, the August 6th edition. I didn't give the date at the beginning. Hope you weren't waiting on that. Of today's issues. And more great programming is directly ahead on American Family Radio. And you'll hear more, by the way, of the Truth for Youth Bible Week. Give them a call there and donate a Bible for free. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, we're going to the Holy Land on a tour in March of 2026. We can't wait to go back. My wife Allison and I have been leading these tours for over 2 decades, nearly 3 decades. And we're going in March of 2026 to Israel. See all the places that you've read about since you were a child in the Bible. Bethlehem, Jerusalem, the Sea of Galilee.